They are racist. They steal food from the homeless. Let it be known. We need to find a positive way to bring people together. We will call a Calvarian bag. We will euthanize your dogs. We will not be intimidated. On this day, our dogs will go to heaven.
So, Monsieur Hillbilly of the Murph has a lot to bring to us today in politics.
Oh my God.
We're going to start the timer at 30 minutes. Let's rock and roll, brother.
Oh man. So, has anybody else read the stuff that I put in the podcast chat about what's been going on in Ukraine and the NATO meeting and stuff like that?
Not really.
I didn't read the stuff, but I know what they showed on the news. It's not good.
Yeah, well, I sat in and listened to the UN Security Council meeting, 6-hour meeting. I didn't listen to the whole 6 hours. I'm just going to go ahead and put that out there. I didn't listen to all of it. So I don't really give a shit what Brazil's got to say about the Ukrainian conflict. All right. I listened to the United States. I listened to the UK. And I listened to Russia. And I listened to Normandy. And Germany. Those were the main people I wanted to hear talk about it. And I listened to the OSCE give their own report on it. And the OSCE is actually the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe. And they're the ones that are actually on the ground doing the reporting on what's going on in the conflict in Donetsk and Luhansk in the eastern part of Ukraine. And they said that they're working to make sure all the Minsk agreements are put into place, which I'd sent Doc the packet of measures, which is the very last thing that they had sent out on the thing, but there's also a Minsk protocol and a Minsk memorandum. Basically, this whole thing has been going on for 8 years, ever since Ukraine had a revolution in 2014, and Russian separatists started fighting the revolution in Luhansk and Donetsk. In the Donbass area is actually what it's called, Donbass. But the OSCE is reporting that recently, I just watched the report 2 days ago, Doc, is when I sent it to you.
Mm-hmm.
About 2 days ago is when they went live and was talking about it. And 24 hours after they had went live, there had been shelling in Luhansk close to the conflict line where the fighting is going on, where they're trying to get the ceasefire to happen. But there's 3 major hotspots in Luhansk, and they're all crossing points. They're all bridges that have been blown up. That there's major hotspots where fighting's going on right now. And there's actually been environmental testing is what they reported. So they've been able to get a ceasefire to happen on both sides long enough for environmental experts to come in and environmentally test. So the OSCE says that shows that politics is possible, that they can get them to at least stop fighting long enough to do something, right? But they can't get a security guarantee for any infrastructure to be built, because that's going to take months to install power and water and all these things to put the vital infrastructure back in these areas is going to take months to rebuild. So they can't get a security agreement on both sides that there will be no fighting long enough for them to start construction on vital infrastructure. So that's where they're at right now. And back in 2020, though, in July of 2020, both sides did commit to withdrawing all their heavy weapons like tanks and missiles and shit like that. They took all that off the field. But there's still IDE bombs and small arms and stuff like that. In 2021, there was 48 casualties, civilian casualties, 43 of which were by explosive ordnance or explosive devices strapped to civilians. So the fighting's still pretty brutal, but they've got a lot of it to calm down. Since the agreement and everything in 2020, that last packet of measures that I sent you on the ceasefire, there's been a 60% decrease in those conflict areas. So they feel like some type of peace is achievable, but right now, they're just having a problem getting it all together. They have put together a trilateral contact group that they named the TCG. And the trilateral contact group is leaders from both sides of the conflict and somebody from the OSCE in the United Nations. And they go into these conflict areas and they talk to the soldiers and everything, but they're still having trouble getting them to adhere to everything because the United Nations is putting movement restrictions on these hotspot areas. So the troops are wanting them to lift the movement restrictions on both sides so they can move around freely, but there's still conflict going on, so they're having trouble reaching all this agreement. But the OSCE said that with all the coverage they're getting on the Ukrainian conflict right now, it would be a good opportunity for people in the United Nations to remove some of these barriers that are stopping them from achieving peace in the Donbass area. So listen to them talk about the United Nations. It doesn't really sound like all is lost and an invasion is the only way. They actually say that Russia's only option right now is diplomatic and peaceful way of resolving this issue, which is honoring the Minsk agreements. And part of the Minsk agreements is making sure that Ukraine can maintain its sovereignty and they can hold elections and elect their own officials, and they need to come up with their own national constitution for the area. That's that. That's what I heard about it. What did you hear about what's going on in the news?
This morning.
That's it.
This morning, I saw, I think it was a Fox News reporter that was in the southeast on the front line, basically where the Russian separatists are, in constant conflict with, Ukraine.
Right.
And there was actually like active shooting and stuff going on right then. You right, Chico. You right.
I don't think Putin is a diplomat.
No, I've even told Doc, I feel like that Putin is flexing, and it can be for two different reasons. It can be for one, because he's wanting to come in and take control, or it can be for two, that he's just trying to get them to honor the Minsk agreements and to do the ceasefire. It could be for that reason. I mean, he's not trying to hide the fact that he's massing up troops. Like, it's...
Oh, yeah.
Well, I've watched interviews.
Like,
I think I sent you that interview. It was like a 3 fucking hour interview with Putin. And it took me a long time to digest it because I had to wait on it to be translated with, from Russian to English. But, he went on to talk about the ceasefire agreements and everything. And then even back further, like in 2014 with Crimea. And then he went even further back, like in 1994 and 95, it just, there's so much, there's a lot of history there, a lot of history. And I just, it's politics that I honestly feel like we as Americans need to be putting our nose into, honestly.
Yeah,
that's my personal opinion.
There's still a lot.
Being members of the UN or not,
I'm sure the American government has had their nose in this ever since the fucking USSR broke up.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely. And
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
We wrote checks that we can't cash is basically what we did.
Absolutely. And
now we're being called on it. Ukraine's like, you said you'd help us out. and now we're stuck trying to help out something that we
Part
really
of the problem is, and Russia's part of the United Nations, and Russia is, and we're all supposed to be respecting all boundaries of all other nations and finding peaceful ways to coexist.
Right.
But NATO feels like Russia is in violation of that right now. And part of that being because they illegally annexed Crimea from the Ukrainian people, you know what I mean? But if Ukraine becomes a part of NATO, then NATO has the ability to take back that illegally annexed portion of Ukraine by force. And that's what Putin's trying to avoid. And we should be wanting to avoid that too.
I feel from watching Putin's interviews and stuff like that, like when he was upset with the U.S. in 2001 or 2002, whenever the U.S. Or when us as a country, I'm saying the U.S. because I'm looking at it as an open perspective, right? So U.S. went against their agreement on ballistic missiles and like their defense systems and everything, that they had an agreement. Like that kind of made Putin lose respect for the UN, I feel like. Because he worded it a little bit different, but I mean, that's, if you read between the lines, that's what he was saying, is like he felt disrespected directly because of that, you know, and us as America tried to justify that type of defense to the war on terrorism. The war on terrorism was what we were focusing on. That's why we were beefing up our weapons and everything else.
Well, Putin knows the same thing that most other people should already know, and that is you can only declare war on a country or an army. You can't declare war on an idea, and terrorism is an idea. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's why he called him out.
It's not an army. It's not a country. It's like the war on drugs. If you don't put a face and an army and a country to the war, then the war is never going to end.
It's never really a war.
It's you can't. If you read the Constitution, you cannot even declare war. You cannot legally declare war on anything but a standing army or another country.
Right.
It's just you can't. So this war on drugs and this war on terror and all that, it's nothing. It's not a real war. You can't win it because it'll never stop.
Correct. I think one thing that about the whole Ukraine-Russia situation that's bullshit is the false information that our own media is putting out there. Like,
yeah, they're trying to fuel it.
Yeah,
and some
and
of the videos
why?
I watched,
like that's my question is why? What do they gain from it? What are they trying to fuel?
Some of the videos that I've watched, some of these the people sponsoring some of these videos that are going out is like Rayon, the fucking missile manufacturer, because war is good for business. Yeah. Okay, there's a lot of money to be made in war.
Exactly. You always got to follow the money. So a war does good things for politics because people
for the economy.
Politicians, it helps boost the economy. It helps these companies make money, and where all of our media
creates jobs.
There's very few media outlets that are not owned by major corporations at this point. So you've got to look at what is the motivation behind these major corporations. Why would they want to? It's money.
It's money.
So you got to get your news from independent sources, which are
like us,
difficult to find. Yeah, like us. We'll tell all the different sides.
I mean,
that's why I kind of like have to go to. I even listen to BBC because that's outside of
right. Me too.
Me too. Here.
Yeah, I always look for other countries' news outlets and things like that. Like
I like to watch Al Jazeera. Al Jazeera is a really good world news outlet, I think. You can't really watch a news outlet that's not biased. I don't really think unbiased journalism exists because everybody's biased to some degree.
Yeah, I mean, like,
Yeah,
like
that
one.
is true. But as a journalism teacher, I'll let you know that what you're okay. So what journalists are supposed to do is, even though you have inherent bias in yourself, in order to make it objective, you've got to give both sides of a story. That's how you avoid your own personal bias, is you give both sides of the story so that the reader can decide what they want.
That's why a minute ago I was saying the U.S. instead of saying we, because like I was trying to be, in that middle ground, giving both perspectives.
So that's what you're supposed to do as a journalist, and I don't think journalists are allowed to do that anymore unless they're like NPR journalists do, and that are more, I don't know, not owned by a major corporation. I mean, all of our news outlets are owned by major corporations, and so they're limited. Journalists are limited on what they can and cannot say if they want to keep their job. So you have to. I usually, when there's something major going on, will listen to one news channel and then I'll flip it to another news channel and flip it to another news channel so I can get all of what everyone's saying and then make my own.
I watch C-SPAN.
Beta.
Beta.
You own the BBC, or you own a BBC? Which one is it?
He owns a BBW.
But I mean, with that said, like some more stuff that's going on over there is the protests in Kazakhstan. I don't know if you've looked into that at all.
I haven't had an opportunity to look into that because I've been digging into this. It took me hours to dig out that little bit of information to just be able to relay it and the way that I did. It took me hours of digging through their bullshit that they talk about.
Yeah.
Be able to piece that together. I didn't even talk about what the U.S. said or none of that. The U.S., the only thing they wanted to talk about was they said they know for a fact that Vladimir Putin is going to use a false flag operation to justify invading Ukraine. It's going to be like a car bomb or something like that. He's going to say it went off, that killed Russian people, that he's going to justify to go in. And it could be a biochemical attack that he does on his own people, that Putin does on his own people, but he says he's going to use that as a pretext to invade Ukraine. They know it's going to happen.
Yeah.
That's what they said at the UN Council.
There's already cars being bombed
and I told you, right, the president of the UN Security Council right now is the Russian representative.
Yep. And the president of Ukraine is not even in the country right now.
No, the president of Ukraine is in Munich, I think. He went to Germany.
Yeah, he's in Munich for the council meeting.
Yeah. Which, I mean, is good. Ukrainian politics have to move forward. He can't be locked in his basement scared the Russians are going to invade all the time. He has to get out there and do politics.
Is the Ukrainian people are not that scared of the Russians.
Yeah.
I've seen like interviews and stuff with the Ukrainian people, and they're like, bring it on, almost. That's kind of the attitude that they have. It's interesting.
Well, and like I told you before, we covered this last week or the week before last, whenever we did the map. Russia's army is 5 times bigger than the Ukrainian army. And if you count all the veterans and everything in Ukraine, the Russian army is about 3 times bigger. Plus, UK's been giving them anti-tank missiles and showing them how to use them. US has been giving them fucking Black Hawk helicopters, and that the US and the UK are trying to uphold their place in the UN as honoring sovereignty of other nations in Europe, and Russia is backing Russian separatists. So NATO is funding one side and Russia's funding the other side of the fight in Donbass, in the Donbass area. And that's part of the problem. That's part of what everybody's trying to address at the United Nations is Russia says, and in these Minsk agreements, if you read the Minsk Protocol and the Minsk agreements, Russia is not mentioned in there. So Russia has nothing to adhere to in these agreements. Only Ukraine does. That's one of the problems Ukraine has with the agreements, because Russia doesn't have to stop giving aid to the Russian rebels. but Ukraine has to agree to all these other terms, while Russia funds the people that are attacking them.
It's
And this is part of the impasse they're having in the United Nations right now. Because you say you want peace and everything, but you keep giving money and troops to the people, to the Russian separatists that are fighting the Ukrainian. They're fighting the Ukrainians. Yeah. You know what I mean? It's catch-22. It's catch-22. But,
it's
you know,
a mess.
the OSBCE or whatever, and the Trilateral Contact Group, they're trying to come to some type of agreement. The people who are actually doing the fighting in the trenches, you know, are trying to implement a ceasefire. And the NATO people on the ground that are trying to orchestrate this whole thing, they're saying, at the end of the day, they're saying, where there is political will, there is a way, and progress is possible. Like I said, they can go in and do environmental testing, right? They can at least stop shooting and stop bombing each other long enough to let environmental experts come and test the environment. So there is somewhere in there they can find agreements long enough to stop shooting each other. Something can happen. Some type of progress can be made. And if we want a peaceful outcome to all of this that's going on, we have to believe that diplomacy can be reached in this area. You know what I mean? In the conflict zones, in those hot spots. We have to believe that diplomacy can prevail. Because nobody wants to fuck with the alternative.
I don't know. I mean, we saw what happened in Crimea 2014.
Right.
I think it's going to be a similar situation. Because right now, there's no one strong enough to stand up against them. Even if the UN decides to all group up. Like, I don't feel... Putin's got an ace in his hand somewhere.
Yeah, he's got an ace in the hole for sure, because Joe Biden's the fucking president and Kamala Harris is the vice president. He's got that ace in the hole. There's that.
Putin's like the guy, like we were talking about with Eminem and Snoop Dogg. You don't tell him what not to do, or he's going to do it.
Yeah.
He's that kind of guy.
I mean, time will tell. The U.S. said that an attack was imminent before the Olympics were over. Nothing's happened, though. There's been no invasion. And even the person that represents Russia at the UN Security Council said that they do not plan to invade.
Right.
That they still want to pursue the Minsk agreements. But, you know, it has been 8 years since they drew up the Minsk agreements. It's been a long-ass time. Almost a decade.
And it didn't stop.
Right, and the fighting's still going on. At crossings and control points,
Yeah.
there's still a lot of explosive ordnance, still a lot of IEDs. It's still a war zone out there. They, you know...
Yeah, it's not.
It is what it is.
So real quick, do you want to hit on the topic of the convoy, the trucker convoy, and
Yeah, the trucker convoy
Canada,
in Canada,
Canada,
in Canada,
In Canasta, yeah.
Canada. Yeah. So Justin Trudeau.
You mean Adolf Trudeau?
Adolf Trudeau.
Is that like a distant relative?
Of Opal? Probably.
No.
She's probably related to somehow.
Are you kin to Justin Trudeau, Opal?
No.
Are you related to Adolf Trudeau?
No.
Or any other person named Adolf?
Because like we have this wonderful video of Adolf Trudeau.
Yeah,
on our,
you
on
know
our TikTok.
that just a few days ago, and I can't find the tweet, but I can send you this.
Would you like me to play this video of Adolf Trudeau?
You can.
Yeah, let's turn it up just a little
We
bit.
can talk about it afterwards.
It's called All Dogs Go to Heaven, starring Adolf Trudeau.
They are racist. They steal food from the homeless. Let it be known. We need to find a positive way to bring people together. We will call a Calvarian bag. We will euthanize your dogs. We will not be intimidated. On this day, our dogs will go to heaven.
Yeah, so.
Interesting. Interesting.
So Elon Musk had tweeted.
That's all I gotta say.
No, wait. This kind of goes hand in hand with our TikTok that we just created because Elon Musk did something very similar about the same
Elon
time.
Musk tweeted a meme likening Justin Trudeau to Hitler in criticism of the Freedom Convoy crackdown.
Great minds think alike.
Right? He
Very much so
actually,
to Elon.
Musk tweeted a photo of Hitler with the text, "Stop comparing me to Justin Trudeau" at the top, and "I had a budget" at the bottom.
I mean, he really did have a budget.
Yeah, it was a great one. It's a great one.
Yeah. Craziness. But even in some major news outlets, and I was surprised to even see Fox News or anything say anything like this, but they've even said in major news outlets that what Justin Trudeau is doing is a threat to freedom in general. And he's cracking down on protesters. He's calling these blockades illegal. He's having the cops remove them. I've even heard some people say that some of the protesters have been shot by police. They're freezing their bank accounts. And he's even saying that they're going to put their pets in puppy prison for several weeks.
Puppy prison.
Yeah, they're going to put them in puppy prison. They're going to impound their dogs. And they're going to leave them in there for a few weeks. And if they can't pay the fees from the pound, then their dogs get put to sleep. I mean, that's what they do at the pound. If you can't, they don't really adopt them out anymore. They just put them to sleep. So really what they're doing is they're euthanizing people's pets if they don't leave the barricade. You're not allowed to protest in Canada. It's just not it's not something you can do.
Were you able to read any of this right here?
Yeah. Those resumes look strikingly familiar.
Were you reading that, Opal? At all?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
What are we reading?
What's
I had
on?
the full screen.
The
There's
similarities
resumes,
between the two: implemented health passports, suspended civil liberties, censored opposition, created two classes of citizen, forced healthy people into isolation, banned certain demographics from cinemas and restaurants, forced people to undergo unwanted medical interventions. Yeah, I said that right. Use the media to control public perception. I wonder who else tries to do that. Anyway, forced certain demographics out of their professions.
Yep.
Sounds oddly familiar.
It does.
just a wee bit,
Thank you, Vader, for sending that. Vader sent that.
There's a couple things, that they're similar, just a couple.
Yeah,
a little bit.
yeah, like their hair part.
Yeah.
They had their natural part is on the same side.
I mean, they're
we had
using
to
the
add the
same arm.
mustache.
yeah,
We had to add the mustache.
They're using the same arm at least.
yeah.
Well, most people are predominantly right-handed.
Those who aren't are Satanists. No, I'm just kidding. I'm kidding.
What must if you're ambidextrous?
But I do, and look, he's triple vaccinated and got COVID, and his kids got COVID.
Uh-oh.
Did anyone see, like, this is a little bit off topic and we literally only have like 40 some seconds left, but did anyone, do you guys know who Dr. Oz is?
Yes.
Did you see where he's like running for senator in Pennsylvania?
No.
Yes.
Yes.
Oh my
I
god.
feel like as a society we're going backwards.
Yeah.
I agree.
Well,
And you know, Rome was a great society and it fell, and we're about to have a.
We had that
repeat of
conversation
history.
a couple podcasts ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're
Well,
going backwards.
I see it.
I was
see it.
just going to add, you know, you, Doc, you and I think your mom as well had both said that like all this hoopla in the fucking media has got to be to cover something up, right? There's got to be some kind of bigger thing behind all of it that they're not wanting us to talk about. I mean, you talked about it a little bit earlier today about how the vaccine actually makes you more susceptible to the virus, and Dr. Robert Malone had published a paper on it about how the mRNA snap protein, spike proteins that are produced in the vaccine actually make you more susceptible to contracting the coronavirus. And Dr. Robert Malone is actually one of the people that made the mRNA, that patented the mRNA method that Pfizer and Moderna used in their vaccines, and then came forward with this information. I'd showed you something about where he talked to Tucker Carlson on Fox News about it, and you said he was also on Joe Rogan's podcast, talking about how the vaccine is actually more harmful than it is helpful.
Yeah, well, whenever everyone was attacking Joe Rogan, like when all that started, is because he had that guy on his show, and they were talking about that, and Pfizer-owned media outlets were attacking Joe Rogan because like they wanted everyone to think that was misinformation, that this was bullshit, that blah blah blah, and then that's when cancel culture came in and society, you know, like all the bullshit with Spotify and everything else, and Joe Rogan stood through it and stood his ground because he knew he was right. And you know, then you know, you see what it did for that. But
so the bigger picture here, if the vaccine not only doesn't work but is worse for you, then why the mandates and the lockdowns, and why are they even relevant at that point?
And see, I think we are going to see some kind of protests due to all this stuff. And I feel like now this I don't know for a fact, but I'd have to look up the law or the bill that was just passed. I don't know exactly which one it was, but it was where police officers can now use aggressive force without cause. And this was just passed within the past couple weeks. While everything else was going on, no one really knew about it. I will find out the exact.
In which state?
I'll have to find out. But I think it's in preparation for they're going to have protests, and everyone's going to try to protest peacefully like Canada's doing right now, but they're not going to allow it to be peaceful.
Because if you turn it into not peaceful protest, then it can turn into something
Martial
bigger
law.
and they can make money.
Boom. Yeah.
Turn
More
into a
control.
revolution.
Money, 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 money.
They could turn into a revolt.
Beat it up, Opal. Just smack it.
I know.
Smack it.
It's annoying.
Smack it.
Like it's one of your kids.
Yeah. All right. Okay. Is that it, Murph?
Are you cutting me off now? You said we only had a few seconds anyway.
Yeah.
We're putting the Grammys the song on. You know the Grammy song. You know, da, 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 time to get off the stage.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Wrap it up.
Yeah, that can,
You got anything else big to talk about, or?
no, that can be it.
Okay.